I'm going to take you through what's happening out there in the world of what's called persistence or opening up backdoors, which is where a lot of the attacks are now starting these days. It's going to complement really well the trend micro presentation and the know before. As a matter of fact, we just did a joint event yesterday with know before down here in South Florida and the FBI. It was kind of cool to put it all together. But we complement existing security solutions. We're cybersecurity for the 99%. And that's our tagline since day one, 5+ years back. Our founders came out of a 10-year run at the NSA, started Huntress to pretty much go after and defend attacks that are now driving over 90% of the attacks using these open backdoors. I have got a ding. Sorry about that, gang. That's my my Slack in the background. If that gets annoying, I'll take a second, turn it off. Apologies. Basic presenting 101, and I missed it. Anyway, so 3 founders 5 years ago were well capitalized. The NSA, what they were doing was using malicious persistence to hijack Windows operating systems to pretty much open up a back door to be able to go into our foreign adversaries' environments and stay there for months to years at a time. They would stay there with tremendous dwell time so that other teams could come in with the NSA, poke around, find data, exfiltrate data. But their job was not to blow anything up. What they wanted to do is stay there, hiding in plain sight and hide under the covers inside those environments. When they left the NSA, started Huntress, they flipped the equation and said, we can now train cyber threat hunters to be able to find that in commercial businesses where hackers are now starting to use those techniques. So Huntress been on the in the news lately, out in front of the Kaseya attack or out in front of the Hafnium breach. Kyle, our CEO down there on CNBC, we recently landed a $40 million Series B round, and we are investing heavily in continuing to evolve and grow our platform. Pretty well known in the cybersecurity community, over 800,000 endpoints, whole lot of success with existing customers. But let me take you through what we want to go through today in the next few minutes. We are out there hunting for persistent threats. These are places where the bad actors have gone in and hijacked legitimate Windows operating system code, opened up back doors. They don't want to have to come and go and brute force or work their way in every time, so they use those back doors to come back later and start to encrypt and drop all sorts of nasty stuff in the environment and eventually ransom or hold the data hostage. These persistence threats are bypassing preventive tools because these bad actors have figured out how to circumvent and get past those. We complement everything out there. We are a gap filler in your cybersecurity stack, and I'll show you where that is. We're simple and affordable. There is a trial if you get to the point that you want to give it a shot. We'll follow up afterwards. We won't go too much into the actual platform itself, but this is what's key on the educational part. John Hammond, one of our cybersecurity researchers, over close to 300,000 YouTube followers at this point. If you're not familiar with John and you are focused on cybersecurity, check out his YouTube, check out his blog. But over 90% of the attacks these days are using these malicious persistence tactics. The reason they're doing that is they don't want to have to brute force in or work their way in, whether it's RDP or phishing, which we just heard about with know before. They're going to try to do that one time, get inside your environment, and then dwell and stay there for typically days, weeks, or months. Average dwell time is about 100 days these days. They want to outlast your recovery or your backup in DR. So if backup is 60 to 90 days, they want to be in there for 100 plus. That way, if it gets restored, they're going to restore. You end up restoring with the malicious persistence in there. So if we take a look at who's the 1%, we're cybersecurity for the 99%. If we take NIST, National Institute Standards and Technology, we flatten it out to show all of the different security solutions that you would need to properly protect, and still not going to get you to 100%. The question is, where do you spend that next security dollar to give you that added layer of protection? If you take a look at that 1%, unlimited budgets to do all these things under each aspect of NIST, but if we take a look at what we typically see, and it plays really well into this morning's webinar, take a look at what we usually see, which is heavy on that protective preventive layer. So your NextGen AVs, so you've got Trend on the call today. If you look at user training with know before and fill in all of those things, and typically really well secured on the backup and recover, what's typically missing is that detect and respond, which is so critical. But the problem there is you need security experts in that space that are very expensive and super rare individuals. In the Huntress platform, we are focused exclusively after someone is compromised, gotten past that protect to prevent layer, which is typically correct 99.x% of the time. They're needed, they're going to do their job. But when one of these bad actors outsmarts that preventive layer that's typically relying on mostly software and looking for known goods and known bads, you've got to switch to offense and then hunt in that environment and look to detect and respond to the right of compromise, looking for a combination of using people and software technology. So you put more and more people in the mix, and that's where we focus. As we are a human threat ops team hunting in your environment for malicious persistence that's gotten past that protect or prevent layer. We're hunting in that space. If we bring up MITRE, if you're familiar with it, if not, well worth checking out and tracking. What they do is they map all of the attacks and the latest vectors and techniques against their framework. And if you go from left to right, I know it's small, but this is the anatomy of an attack. Typically initial access, execution. They're going to try to brute force in, phishing, RDP, some way to get into your environment. Then they want to plant persistence, open up that back door and stay there for days, weeks, months. Once they've opened up that back door, look what happens to the right. This is where you get into that data exfiltration, credential access, lateral movement, eventually exfiltrate the data, eventually impact with encryption or some sort, and then hit you with ransomware or hold the data hostage. What MITRE does is they're constantly updating this with the techniques, but that attack vector stays pretty much the same from left to right. And we are hunting and focused on that persistence stack. We have on our blog all sorts of information, general education on what is persistence, why is it important, and how does it get used, how is it used to bypass those preventive layers. Basically what they're doing is opening up that back door, and we're hunting in that persistence stack to close the back door so they cannot do discovery payload execution. So we're in there constantly hunting every 15 minutes. We're looking for those malicious footholds. MITRE does a really good job of defining what is persistence. We've got an ebook on our website also. No self-serving Huntress info in there, not a sales pitch. It's a few pages, about 10, 12 pages on what is persistence and where 90% of the attacks are starting with persistence these days or using it. Well worth getting up to speed on what it is and how you block and defend against it. And MITRE defines it here as keeping access and across restarts. Those persistence mechanisms were put in there by Microsoft day one and still there. It's all the stuff that we love to hate every time you boot that Windows machine. All of those auto starting files or auto runs are then used to be hijacked. The bad actors are replacing or hijacking that legitimate code or adding startup code. It goes undetected, again, hides in your environment. It's all this stuff that you've seen over the years, hundreds to thousands of these auto runs per machine. It's all the stuff that gets installed and updated every time you do new software, every time you do an update. What it's doing is adding, updating auto runs, and the bad actors know they can hide in that environment. What we do is little agent is installed. It's about 1 to 2% of the CPU, 10 to 12 meg, real light. It collects the data. There's no heavy lift there. It goes up to our cloud. Our cloud will parse that out, and our cyber threat hunting team will look at it. If we deem that it's malicious, we would then just send you a remediation report. We also then give you the step-by-step with a green easy button so we don't bother you with any alerts. If you want to leverage our team, ask questions, what's going on, take a look around, get an incident, they will be glad to help jump around and look at different things in your environment. So once we have those agents out there, they're able to provide all sorts of additional context and color around it. That ThreatOps team, what I want to focus on here is the give back side of it. So we're doing security research. Again, check out our blog. We're out there in that cybersecurity community. Our folks are well known in the Reddit post. We've been on CNBC lately. The Howard University that just hit yesterday, I believe it was. Our folks were on the news with that and out in front helping out. So we are out there not only doing what is tied to our platform, reverse engineering stuff, but we're way out in front, like with the Kaseya breach, the Hafnium breach with the Exchange, constantly giving back and helping. Our belief is if we can help across the board, it's going to make the tide rise for all, and it really is. So check us out, in the press, what we're doing. So that's where we fit. Much needed piece in that detect and respond. Couple questions to leave you with. Can your team find and stop an attacker that didn't create alerts in your preventive tools? Not a knock on those preventive tools. They're right. Again, they're going to be correct 99.x% of the time. They're needed. But could you stop an attack that didn't already have a known bad and get caught by preventive? Typically, the answer is no, unless you're possibly that 1% that's got those threat ops team. We can supplement them, but it's typically the 99% that the answer to that is no. And 100% of what we find have already been bypassed the preventative tools. Again, not a knock on them. They are needed. It's just that they're looking for things we're not, and we're looking for things that they're not. We are looking at behavior-based to help you protect and defend. And let me just cut to the end here, Ron. The test drive, if you want to give it a shot, there's a trial out there. You want to stay away from the sales pitch, but that's what we do, where we focus and who we are. Any questions?
So Bob, the good thing is that if people have questions, they don't know how to uncover the so-called Trojan horse, try it out for a couple of weeks. And, you know, I bet that's where all of your sales come from, is when people think that they're safe, they take advantage of the trial, and then they go, holy bleep, we didn't know about this vulnerability that could have really put us in the headlines. And so I'd encourage everyone to take full advantage of that.
Thanks, Ron. Yeah, exactly right. Even with the recent breach happening in round 2 with the Exchange servers, we were able to see folks that thought they were patched that weren't, and we started making calls into those accounts and said, you know, heads up. So we actually had some trials during that time period, and folks would come in saying, yeah, I'm all set, I'm good to go, and we'd be finding either unpatched servers. The other thing is, if there's remnants, if you were hit at some point, whether, you know, TrickBot, Emotet, some of the stuff that lingers, even though you've been remediated, cleaned up, it's not unusual for our trial to actually find stuff out there that are not necessarily malicious, but they're tied to remnants left over, and that can be used as a head start for attackers. So yeah, thanks, Ron. Absolutely. The trial itself, by the way, is no credit card, none of the commitment info, basically URL, email address, and off you go. And our SEs will actually help you deploy. You could deploy hundreds to thousands of agents inside of literally 20 to 30 minutes. You'd have it up and running.